I'm just driving right now, but I figured I would do the little introduction thing. My name is Tiffany. I hate saying my name. I was going to post a video about my trip from California back to the East Coast. And I started putting it together, and then I got some messages that were referencing my video where I said that I bought a van that I was going to convert. So I went and bought something.
2016 2500 high roof ProMaster.
Yeah! I just said I bought a van, and then that was the end of that. So I figured I should do a video first where I kind of give a little bit of an update on what's happening with the van. So the van is in progress. It is nowhere near being done. All right, where was I? So in this video, I wanted to talk about putting in the sound deadener on the floors, the walls, and the ceiling. And then talk about putting in the subfloor. And I wanted to talk about putting in the furring strips on the ceiling, which is what I've been attaching the slatted ceiling to. Today we are installing sound deadener. Basically the first step is putting in the sound deadener because like I've talked about in previous videos, the van itself, when you drive it, especially when it's empty, when there's nothing in it, it rattles like crazy. I mean, it's basically just sheet metal with some supports, but there's nothing really weighing it down. I mean, and it's built for that. It's built to carry heavier loads. Sailor's first ride in the van. She's not too happy about all those banging sounds in the back. So you put in the sound deadener to kind of weigh down the metal and to just, it gives some weight to it so it's not just rattling around. I'm using this Killmat stuff because it was recommended in 1,000 van videos. Basically, I'm going to roll it on with this roller. Hopefully it's not as labor intensive as everybody makes it seem like it is, but like everything that's going to happen in this van, I'm sure it's going to be harder than I think it's going to be. So we're going to count on it being a lot of work today. Put this stuff on the walls. I've been told to cover about 25% of every surface, but then a lot of people say to cover everything. I'm going to stick with the 25% estimate just because that seems more affordable, less work, and I guess I can always add more if I need to. It has this like bubble kind of surface on it, and apparently you kind of just put it up on the wall and roll it down with this roller thing until basically that like square pattern goes away and it looks flat. I don't know what else to say about that. It's not the most exciting part of a van build for sure, but it has to be done because this thing is really loud. I've underestimated everything that anyone has ever said about something being difficult or taking a long time. I've been like, yeah, I got it, it's fine. Putting in the sound deadener wasn't hard to do, but it just took more time than I expected. Okay, day 2 of putting in the sound deadener and just starting to do the subfloor. And by just starting, I mean I just went to Home Depot and got the plywood. So I went with a 3/8 inch ply, and I had to get 3 sheets because they're 4x8, and I'm doing them 4x4 because the total length is just shy of 12 feet. And I'm hoping by the time I cut everything out, I should have maybe 2 foot lengths on the side, 1.5 foot, something left on the side that I can use to make my nailers for the ceiling across the beams up there. So right now I'm about to trace out the mat. Thank God this van came with a mat. So now I have to go trace it and then jigsaw cut it all out. I went with a 3/8 inch ply because it was still solid enough that you could walk on it without a lot of flex. It still has some flex now, but I think once it's secured, it'll be, you know, it'll be solid. You can walk on it and it's not gonna bend over time and warp, I hope. Luckily for me, my van came with a mat that I'm using underneath the subfloor. So I could take that mat out and lay it out on the pieces of plywood and just trace it. And I could also mark kind of where the holes that go through the floor of the van, where those are. And the other good thing about this is that these were where the bolts were that were tying it down before, like little tie downs. So I'm gonna just mark it straight on here where they are so that I can drill straight in to attach the subfloor. Okay, moment of truth to see if my cutting skills worked. So far it looks good, I think. Like a glove. So close. So there's a little tiny wrinkle in the this stuff that is making it get stuck. And a little gap there. So I have to do a better job. Finally got the subfloor perfected. Look at that. I don't know if you can see that. So it's not secured yet. I'm gonna keep it just kind of floating for as long as possible. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm just kind of sitting in the van right now, drinking tea. Also there's sailor's face on my socks. But I'm just sitting here because I'm tired and I'm trying to motivate to get started, but it's just kind of gloomy and cold today, and just don't feel like it. Right now, what I'm about to do is something that I've been looking forward to for a while, which is actually taping out with blue painter's tape where everything is going to go in the van. Now that I have the subfloor down, I can actually tape it and look at it. This way I can kind of start planning where outlets need to be, so I can start planning where to run the electrical. I drew it to scale, just a rough blueprint outline. Van layout. Kitchen, roughly over here. Hopefully like a closet pantry kind of thing here. Fixed bed in the back, and then I'm thinking a bench seat here. My thoughts right now is to do uppers just over the kitchen, so it's kind of like a kitchen area. Uppers on this side, probably some sort of rounded edge here so you don't like walk in and just like immediately hit your head. This is why I'm doing this. So here I have kitchen, right? All the way, I had it 6 feet, which comes to here. And then I had a closet coming to here, another 2 feet there. And yet my bed is coming to here, which is 4.5 feet. So that is not a thing that's gonna work. As for the ceiling furring strips, you wanna put in furring strips because you don't wanna be putting in holes for every piece that you're putting in, because every time you screw into the metal, you risk rust because you're taking off that paint coating. So wherever I've been able to, I've done a coating of like a Rust-Oleum just to seal it up. But when you're doing these self-tapping screws, those are designed just to go through the wood, through the metal, and stay there. So I figure by putting in the furring strips, you are just getting basically like 1, 2, 3, like 4 or 5 screw holes across the beams, and then all those pieces of 1x2s just get attached to that wood without touching the metal behind it. Cutting these furring strips for the top beams that go across the van, and this is what we're gonna use as nailers so that we're not putting 1,000 holes into the ceiling itself and also the beams, because you know, the more holes, the worse. Well, I already cut through my new sawhorse. Oopsies. The thing with the ProMaster is that there are beams down the middle, but all the way in the front there is one beam that it's there, but it's hard to access because it's kind of in that overhead cavity. Can't really reach the beam just like the other beams because that one has the headliner. Is that what it's called? I think it's called the headliner. That one has the headliner over it. So what I decided to do with that one was just kind of get this little tiny piece, maybe like 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch, some little tiny piece that I cut. And I tried to attach it back into that beam, like facing forward. All of this cracked here and here. So that's gonna go away. And we're going to reuse part of it. Now we are gonna get rid of this molding I cut because it is horrible and nothing works. It's just a mess. So this guy's out also. Trash. It's always the last one that has to be a problem. So close. Now the way it ended up landing against it, it was kind of angled like this. So the bottom wasn't perfectly flat. So when I started to attach the ceiling slats to it, I couldn't quite get in there with the drill. Slight problem. This doesn't fit in here. And I tried it with a hammer. All right, when all else fails, we're gonna go the old-fashioned way with a hammer and brad nails. 1 inch, number 17, wire brads. Brads. I need a smaller hammer. Couldn't get in there with the hammer, really. Then I found this smaller hammer. Okay, I'm gonna try this little tiny mini hammer and see if it fits in there. Got in there with that, and I would hammer one and it would get in fine, like just barely. And once I got that one in, I would go to do the one next to it and that one would fall out. So they just weren't grabbing, it wasn't working. So there's an angle here that we can't get the brad nails into no matter what I try. So through some crazy mathematical geometry, trigonometry stuff that I had absolutely nothing to do with because that is not something that my mind can process, I opt to stick with the trusty trial and error, just do it until you get it right technique. I decided to go with my brother's advice here and let him just try to do this math equation to try to figure out the angle of that piece of wood and how we could cut a piece of wood without a table saw to extend that piece out and have it have a flush bottom that I could just attach those ceiling slats to. Should be, so now these can hopefully get a little closer to, still a little bit of an angle, but it should be better to brad into that. I was able to get that brad nailer I have into there well enough to attach those beams. The back one was the same deal where I kind of just screwed it into the back beam this way, and then I measured it so it was at the same level as the other beams, so I could just put it right up underneath that. I had more room to work in the back, so it was easier to get that one in there and then attached to the ceiling slats. So I think that pretty much covers it. That's pretty much what this whole beginning part of work was after I did all the cleaning and all that stuff. Like everyone says, everything takes way more time than you think it's going to. You spend a lot of time just sitting in the van staring at walls, thinking. When I was going to start doing this van build, I had this idea that it was going to be like, step 1 is the sound deadener, step 2 is the insulation, step 3 is this. But it all kind of goes together, and it's like every time you want to do something, your mind kind of has to go back and be like, oh, but before that I can't do it until I do this, and I can't do that until I do this. So everything kind of is just like all simultaneously going on, and it gets kind of confusing, and it also is kind of frustrating because you can't just go in and do this one thing you had planned. It's so satisfying though once you get something worked out, that like you kind of face all these challenges and you're constantly like working your way through them, and then once you actually get them accomplished, it's like this major satisfying feeling like you did it, you know? So anyway, I guess I'll leave it there. That's pretty much this phase of the build. And I guess if you are into this, you should subscribe, and you should tell your friends, and you should hit the bell thing and get the alerts, and follow us on Instagram, and blah, 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 all that stuff. Okay, goodbye.